I can't wait to hold these babies in my arms.
And we will love them together.
Mark's home was unusually quiet that morning, the kind of silence that didn't feel empty but full. Full of meaning. Full of something new that had gently settled into the walls overnight. Soft sunlight slipped through the half-drawn curtains, casting pale gold patterns across the room. Dust motes floated lazily in the air, dancing as if they, too, were aware that something sacred had happened here. The city outside was already awake, distant horns and muffled voices reminding the world to keep moving. But inside this room, time had slowed, almost out of respect. Amanda stirred first. For a brief moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then warmth registered. A steady presence beside her. The faint, familiar scent of Mark, clean, calm, grounding. Her lashes fluttered open, and her breath caught softly when she saw him. Mark lay on his back, one arm bent above his head, the other resting loosely between them. His face was relaxed in sleep. The sharp lines of his usual composure softened into something boyish, almost vulnerable. In sleep, he looked younger, gentler, human in a way few people ever got to see. Amanda watched him for a long while. She traced his face with her eyes, the curve of his brow, the slight crease between it that told stories of years spent carrying responsibility alone. She wondered how many mornings he had woken up like this before, surrounded by luxury yet starved of warmth. How many nights he had ended in silence. Carefully, as if afraid the moment might shatter, she shifted closer. The sheet whispered softly as she moved. Her hand brushed his fingers. Accidentally, she told herself, though her heart knew better. The contact was light, almost nothing, but it sent a quiet shiver through her. She didn't pull away. Mark stirred. His fingers moved first, instinctively curling just enough to acknowledge her presence. Then his eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the light, to the reality of her there. When his gaze met hers, something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, relief, and a tenderness that felt almost overwhelming. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. "Good morning," Amanda finally whispered, her voice still heavy with sleep. Mark's lips curved into a soft smile, nothing like the confident ones he wore for the world. This one was just for her. "Morning," he replied quietly. "I was hoping I wasn't dreaming." She let out a small, breathy laugh. "I was thinking the same thing." He turned onto his side to face her fully, propping his head slightly with his arm. The movement brought them closer, their foreheads almost touching. His eyes searched her face, not with hunger, but with something deeper. Like he was memorizing her. "You okay?" he asked gently. "Last night was a lot." Amanda nodded slowly. "Yeah. I mean, yes. I'm more than okay." She hesitated, then added honestly, "I just didn't expect to wake up feeling this calm." Mark exhaled, relief visible in the way his shoulders relaxed. "Neither did I," he admitted. "I kept thinking, if you changed your mind in the morning, I'd understand." She reached out then, her fingers deliberately finding his, lacing with them this time. "I didn't say yes because I felt pressured," she said softly. "I said yes because I wanted to. Because I still want to." His grip tightened just a little, not possessive, just grateful. "I don't deserve how patient you are with me," he murmured. Amanda smiled, her thumb brushing gently over his knuckles. "We are not keeping score, Mark." A comfortable silence settled again. Somewhere in the apartment, a clock ticked faintly. Sunlight crept higher, warming their faces. Mark studied her for a moment longer before speaking again. "Do you know what I noticed last night?" he asked. "What?" "You smiled in your sleep." He chuckled quietly. "I've never seen that before. I kept thinking, how many nights did you go to bed afraid, and I never knew." Amanda swallowed, emotion rising unexpectedly. "Too many," she said honestly. Then, after a pause, "But not anymore." His eyes softened. "I promise you something," he said, his voice low but steady. "I can't erase what you've been through. But I will never be the reason you feel small again. Ever." Her throat tightened. "That means more to me than you know." She shifted closer, resting her forehead lightly against his. They stayed like that, breathing each other in, their hands still entwined. No rush. No expectations. Just the quiet certainty of two people choosing each other. "What happens now?" Amanda asked softly. Mark smiled. "Now?" He brushed a loose strand of hair away from her face, slow and careful. Now we take it one morning at a time. She smiled back. I like that. He leaned forward just enough to press a gentle kiss to her forehead, tender, reverent, full of promise. When he pulled back, his eyes shone with something dangerously close to tears. I'm really glad you're here, he said. Amanda squeezed his hand. Me too. And as the morning continued to unfold around them, wrapped in sunlight and quiet confessions, it felt less like the beginning of a love story, and more like the moment both of them finally came home. The room was still wrapped in morning light, but something had shifted. Amanda lay quietly beside Mark, her head resting against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. It was calm, certain, safe, a sound she had once believed was not meant for her. Her fingers traced slow, absent patterns on his shirt, and without warning, her mind drifted backward. There had been other mornings. Mornings where she woke up before the sun because hunger did not wait for daylight. Mornings where fear sat heavier on her chest than any blanket ever could. She remembered the cramped room she once shared with her mother, the peeling paint, the cracked ceiling that leaked when it rained. The way she used to lie awake listening to her mother cough through the night, each sound slicing deeper into her heart. She remembered standing in front of shop windows, pretending she was just browsing, when all she wanted was food. Remembered clutching rejection letters, unanswered calls, and the humiliation of begging people who looked through her like she didn't exist. She remembered nights when silence screamed. And then, him. The memory came sharp and uninvited. The fear, the desperation, the feeling of being cornered by circumstance, of making choices she never thought she would. She remembered how small she had felt then. How alone. Her breathing faltered. Mark felt it immediately. Amanda, he murmured, lifting his head slightly. Hey, where did you go? She swallowed, eyes glistening. I was just remembering. He shifted so he could see her face fully. His brow creased with concern. The bad memories. She nodded. Sometimes it still feels unreal. This. She gestured vaguely around them, at the room, the light, him. I keep thinking I'll wake up and be back there. His chest tightened. He had his own flashbacks too, of arrogance disguised as control, of power used without compassion, of a man who thought money could excuse emotional distance, of the night he met her when he hadn't been the man he should have been. Mark took a slow breath. I think about it every day, he admitted quietly. She looked up at him. About what? About who I was. His voice was steady, but his eyes weren't. About the things I didn't see. The pain I ignored because it was inconvenient, because it didn't fit into my world. Amanda sat up slightly, propping herself on her elbow. Mark, no, he said gently, shaking his head. Let me say it. He looked away for a moment, jaw tightening. I had everything. Money, power, options, and I still managed to be careless with people's hearts. With yours. Her hand found his cheek, turning his face back to hers. You didn't know my story then. But I should have known better, he replied. I should have slowed down. Listened. Seen you as a person, not a moment. His voice cracked. I hate that you suffered while I lived comfortably, unaware. Tears welled in Amanda's eyes. She hadn't expected this raw honesty. This man who could command rooms now struggling to meet her gaze. Mark, she whispered, her voice trembling. I won't pretend it didn't hurt. It did. A tear slipped down her cheek. But that's not who you are now. He shook his head slowly. I don't know if I can ever forgive myself. She leaned forward then, resting her forehead against his. Her tears fell freely now, warm against his skin. You don't get to punish yourself forever, she said softly. Growth doesn't come from shame. It comes from learning. His breath hitched. I see the man you are now, she continued. The man who listens. Who cares. Who protects without controlling. The man who loves me without making me feel small. His hands came up, holding her face as if she might disappear. You make me want to be better, he whispered. Every day. She smiled through tears. And you make me feel safe. For the first time in a long time. That did it. Mark pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly, not desperately, but protectively. Like he was afraid the world might try to take her from him again. She buried her face into his chest, her sobs quiet but unrestrained. "I survived," she said between breaths. "I really did. And I don't feel broken anymore." He kissed the top of her head, his own tears soaking into her hair. "You were never broken," he said firmly. "You were brave. You were strong. And I'm honored you chose me after everything." She pulled back just enough to look at him. "The past doesn't define us," she said. "It led us here, but it doesn't get to follow us forever." He nodded slowly, as if absorbing every word into his soul. "Thank you," he said hoarsely, "for not letting my worst moments erase my chance to do better." Amanda smiled, wiping his tears with her thumb. "We are not our mistakes," she whispered. "We are what we become after them." They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, hearts laid bare, pain acknowledged but no longer in control. Outside, the city continued its noise and chaos. But inside that room, there was only healing, only love. And for the first time in both their lives, the future didn't feel frightening. It felt possible. Marcus' company looked different to Amanda now, not because the glass walls had changed or the marble floors had softened, but because she had changed inside it. The first morning she walked in as part of the leadership team, she paused just inside the revolving doors. Sunlight poured through the atrium, reflecting off polished surfaces, people moving with purpose in tailored suits and confident strides. Weeks ago, this place had felt intimidating, almost unreal. Now, it felt like a challenge she had earned the right to face. "You're early." She turned to find Mark standing a few steps behind her, jacket slung casually over his shoulder, tie loosened. Not the CEO addressing a subordinate, but a man who knew her nerves and respected them. "Couldn't sleep," she said honestly. "I kept going over ideas in my head." His lips curved. "That's how I know you're serious." She smiled. "That's how I know I care." They walked side by side toward the elevators, close enough that their arms brushed occasionally, but never lingering long enough to draw attention. It was unspoken, but understood. Inside these walls, respect came first. In meetings, Amanda was sharp, thoughtful, prepared. She spoke with confidence that surprised even herself, challenging ideas when necessary, offering creative solutions that shifted conversations in her favor. Mark watched her not with ownership, but with admiration. At one point during a board discussion, she countered a senior executive's proposal with calm precision. "I understand the numbers," she said evenly, "but we are forgetting the human angle. If we invest here, we don't just grow revenue, we build loyalty." The room fell quiet. Mark leaned back slightly, eyes never leaving her. "That," he said, "is exactly the perspective this company has been missing." Their eyes met for a brief second, just long enough to acknowledge something deeper, but Amanda didn't linger. She turned back to the table, professionalism intact. Later, as they exited the meeting room, she exhaled deeply. "Was that too much?" Mark shook his head. "It was perfect. You didn't need my approval, but you had it anyway." She laughed softly. "Good to know." Small moments that meant everything. It was the little things that built something steady between them. A sticky note left on her desk one afternoon. "You forgot your lunch again. Cafe downstairs. I'll deny involvement if asked." She read it twice, lips curving upward before she folded it carefully and slipped it into her bag like a secret. Another day, she caught him watching her from across the office, his gaze warm but restrained. When she raised an eyebrow in silent question, he simply mouthed, "You're doing great." Her heart fluttered, but she kept typing. Sometimes they disagreed, and those moments were just as important. "I don't think this campaign should go live yet," Amanda said during a late work session. Mark frowned slightly. "The data says we are ready." She met his eyes. "The people don't. Give it another week." There was a pause. Then he nodded. "Okay." She blinked. "That's it." He smiled. "That's it. I trust you." That word, trust, settled deep in her chest. Evenings were quieter. Shared meals. Conversations that wandered from work to childhood memories to fears they rarely spoke aloud. Sometimes they sat on opposite ends of the couch, talking until midnight. Sometimes they sat close, shoulders touching, words unnecessary. One night, Amanda hesitated before speaking. "I want you to meet my mother." Mark looked up instantly. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she said. "She's a big part of who I am." I want her to see who you really are." He nodded, emotion flickering across his face. "I'd be honored." Her mother's apartment was modest but warm, sunlight filtering through lace curtains, the faint scent of tea and home-cooked food lingering in the air. Amanda hovered nervously as Mark stepped inside, carrying a small gift. "You didn't have to bring anything," Amanda whispered. "I wanted to," he replied. Her mother studied him carefully when Amanda introduced them. Eyes sharp, kind, knowing. The kind of woman who had survived too much to be easily impressed. "So," she said finally, "you're Mark." "Yes, ma'am," he replied respectfully. "Thank you for welcoming me." They talked for hours. About Amanda's childhood. About resilience. About mistakes and growth. Mark listened more than he spoke, answering honestly when asked, never hiding behind charm. At one point, her mother reached for Amanda's hand. "He treats you gently," she said. "I can see it in your eyes. You're not afraid." Amanda swallowed, nodding. "I'm not." Her mother turned to Mark. "Take care of her." He met her gaze, steady and sincere. "With everything I have." That night, as they walked back to the car, Amanda slipped her hand into his. "She likes you," Amanda said quietly. Mark exhaled, tension leaving his shoulders. "That means more than you know." A love that grew, not rushed. Nothing about their relationship felt forced. They grew into each other, through trust, respect, laughter, and shared silence. Amanda never felt overshadowed. Mark never felt needed more than he was wanted. One evening, as they stood on her balcony watching the city lights flicker on, Mark spoke softly. "I don't want to rush you. Or us." She leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. "You're not. This feels right. Slow. Real." He kissed her hair gently. "Good." Because for the first time, love wasn't about rescue or sacrifice. It was about choice. And they were choosing each other, every day. The office had learned Amanda's rhythm. She arrived early, left prepared, spoke with confidence, and carried herself with a quiet authority that no title alone could grant. To most people, she was competent, composed, dependable. But trauma is patient. It waits. It happened during a late strategy meeting, one she hadn't expected to attend. A visiting partner from another firm leaned too close as he spoke, his tone overly familiar, his praise edged with something that made her skin tighten. "You should come by my hotel tomorrow," he said lightly, smiling as if it were harmless. "We could discuss the proposal, privately." The room laughed politely. Amanda didn't. Her chest constricted. The air felt suddenly thin. Her fingers went cold as memory surged, not clear images, but sensations. The loss of control, the pressure, the fear she thought she had buried. Her mind screamed smile. "Stay calm. Don't make a scene." Her body wanted to run. She excused herself quietly and stepped into the hallway, her breath shallow, palms pressed against the cool wall as she fought the tremor climbing her spine. Not again, she thought. I'm not that girl anymore. But fear doesn't listen to logic. Mark noticed immediately when her chair remained empty. He followed instinct more than reason, finding her in the hallway, pale, shaking, eyes distant. He didn't touch her, didn't crowd her. He simply stood beside her, grounding himself so she could ground too. "Amanda," he said softly, "you don't have to explain. Just breathe with me." She tried. Failed. Tried again. "I hate this," she whispered, voice breaking. "I thought I was past it." "You don't have to be past it," he replied gently. "You just have to not face it alone." He turned back toward the conference room and addressed the situation without drama, without dominance. "The meeting is over," he said calmly. "We'll continue another day." Later, he ensured the partner was removed from future collaboration. Quietly, professionally, firmly. No spectacle. Just protection with respect. Amanda's inner battle that night at home. Amanda sat curled on the couch, knees to her chest, replaying everything. Why did it still affect me? Why did part of me freeze instead of fight? What if Mark sees me as fragile? She hated the thought most of all. She loved him, but love made her vulnerable in ways that terrified her. When Mark came in, he didn't speak immediately. He set his bag down, knelt in front of her, and waited. "I felt weak today," she said finally, tears spilling before she could stop them. "And I hate that you had to step in." Mark's heart ached. I didn't step in because you were weak, he said quietly. I stepped in because you deserved respect. She shook her head. What if one day you realize I come with too much damage? That word, damage, cut him. You think I don't see myself the same way? He asked softly. She looked up, startled. I wake up every day wondering why you chose me, he continued. Wondering if I deserve the way you trust me. Wondering if one mistake in my past disqualifies me forever. He swallowed hard. I'm afraid too, Amanda. Afraid that loving you means constantly measuring myself against the man I used to be. She reached for his hand instinctively. You're not him, she whispered. And you're not who they hurt, he replied. They talked for hours that night. About boundaries. About fear. About how love doesn't erase trauma, but it can walk beside it. I need to know I can say no, Amanda said through tears. At work. At home. Everywhere. You can, Mark said immediately. And I will always listen. I need space sometimes. You'll have it. And I need to know, she added, voice trembling, that you love me, not because you trying to make up for the past, but because you choose me. Mark cupped her face gently, his own eyes wet. I choose you, he said. Every version of you. Strong. Afraid. Healing. All of it. She broke then, crying into his chest as he held her, not tightly, not possessively, but safely. Healing. Slowly the days after were quieter. Softer. Mark checked in without hovering. Amanda leaned in without fear. They learned each other's silences as carefully as their words. One evening, as they lay side by side, Amanda spoke into the dim. I don't think love fixes everything, she said. Mark turned toward her. No, but I think it gives us a place to heal. She smiled faintly, intertwining her fingers with his. And for the first time, the past didn't feel like a shadow chasing her. It felt like something behind her. Still there, but no longer in control. Because love, real love, didn't demand she forget. It asked only that she trust. And she was learning, slowly, bravely, how to do exactly that. Evenings at Mark's home had taken on a quiet rhythm. One neither of them rushed, one neither of them wanted to disturb. The house no longer felt vast or echoing. It felt lived in. Warm. Safe. Amanda often arrived just before sunset, when the sky softened into hues of amber and lavender. Mark would be waiting, not formally, not dramatically, but simply there. Sometimes leaning against the doorway with his sleeves rolled up. Sometimes in the kitchen, stirring something simple on the stove. You're late, he would tease gently. You say that every time, she replied once, slipping off her shoes. And every time, you're smiling. Because you still came. That answer stayed with her. They spent many nights doing very little, and somehow, those nights meant everything. Amanda would curl up on one end of the couch with her feet tucked under her, a book resting forgotten in her lap. Mark would sit beside her, close but not crowding, their shoulders brushing now and then. Sometimes he reached for her hand without looking, his thumb tracing slow, absent circles over her knuckles. It was never urgent, never demanding, just present. One evening, as the rain tapped softly against the windows, Amanda rested her head against his shoulder. Mark stilled for a second, as if afraid to disturb the moment, then relaxed, tilting his head slightly until it rested against hers. I used to hate silence, he murmured. Why? She asked quietly. Because it made me think, he admitted. About things I didn't want to face. She smiled faintly. And now? Now, he said, tightening his fingers around hers just a little. It feels peaceful. Like I'm finally where I'm supposed to be. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth of him settle into her bones. On weekends, they walked. Sometimes through the park near his house, wide paths lined with tall trees, children laughing in the distance, couples strolling hand in hand. Sometimes through quieter streets, where the world felt slower. Mark always matched his pace to hers. Amanda noticed everything. The way his hand instinctively guided her away from cyclists, the way he listened when she spoke, even when her words wandered into half-formed thoughts. Once, she laughed suddenly at something he said, the sound surprising even herself. What? He asked, smiling. I forgot what it feels like to laugh like this, she said honestly, without checking myself. His chest tightened. That's my favorite sound, he replied. Your laugh. It feels like a victory. She stopped walking, turning to face him. A victory over what? Over everything that tried to harden you, he said softly. She didn't answer. She just reached for his hand and held it. Their dinners were simple. Soup, pasta, rice dishes cooked together, shoulders brushing as they moved around the kitchen. You're cutting that wrong, Amanda teased one night. Mark frowned at the vegetables. I'm cutting it efficiently. She laughed, reaching over to adjust his grip. Their hands lingered together on the knife handle, fingers warm, breath close. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Mark cleared his throat. If I lose a finger, I'm blaming you. She smiled, stepping back, but her eyes lingered on his face longer than necessary. At the table later, candlelight flickered between them. I'm afraid sometimes, Mark admitted suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. Amanda looked up. Of what? That I'll wake up one day, he said carefully, and you'll realize you don't need me anymore. Her heart softened. She reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. You didn't heal me by being necessary, she said gently. You healed me by being kind. He swallowed. You saved me too, you know. She shook her head. No. You chose to change. I just stayed. That was enough, he said. Sometimes romance crept in unexpectedly. A lingering hug by the door before she left. A kiss pressed softly to her temple while she washed dishes. Once, as she reached up to retrieve a book from a high shelf, Mark stepped behind her instinctively, steadying her waist. His hand stayed there, too long to be accidental, too gentle to be bold. Their breaths caught. She turned slightly, their faces inches apart. Mark whispered, Amanda. Footsteps sounded in the hallway, someone passing outside the door, and the moment shattered like glass. They stepped apart quickly, laughing softly at their own startled expressions. Close one, she murmured. Too close, he agreed. And not close enough. Her smile lingered long after the words. Laughter is healing, they laughed often now. At inside jokes. At his terrible attempts at baking. At her habit of talking to herself when focused. Once, she laughed so hard she nearly cried, leaning into him as he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. I didn't know love could feel like this, she said breathlessly. Like what? He asked. Like rest. He kissed the top of her head. Longing, unspoken one night, as they stood on the balcony watching city lights flicker below, Amanda spoke softly. Do you ever feel like we are standing on the edge of something? Mark turned toward her. Every day. She looked up at him, eyes shining. Does that scare you? Yes, he admitted. But losing you scares me more. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his chest, her voice barely audible. You haven't lost me. His arms wrapped around her slowly, reverently. They stayed like that, no rush, no promises spoken aloud. Just two people learning that love didn't have to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes, the deepest intimacy lived in the space between words. And in that space, anticipation bloomed, gentle, aching, and beautifully alive. The office was alive with its usual mid-morning rhythm. Phones ringing softly, keyboards tapping, muted conversations drifting through glass walls. Amanda sat at her desk just outside Mark's office, reviewing reports, her posture calm, composed. Then the elevator doors opened. The shift in energy was immediate. Amanda looked up and froze. The woman stepping out was striking in a way that demanded attention. Tall, confident, dressed in a red, figure-hugging minigown that shimmered under the office lights, revealing more than it concealed. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor, each step deliberate, practiced. She didn't look around for permission. She walked straight toward Mark's office. Amanda's fingers stilled on her keyboard. The woman didn't acknowledge her, didn't smile, didn't introduce herself. She simply pushed open Mark's door, stepped inside, and closed it behind her. Then, unmistakably, the lock clicked. Amanda's heart lurched. She stared at the door, heat rising to her face, confusion and disbelief tangling tightly in her chest. 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind, none of them kind. Who is she? Why would Mark allow this? Why lock the door? Minutes passed. 5, 10, 15. The glass walls that once felt transparent now felt opaque, isolating. Amanda could see nothing, only faint silhouettes moving inside, indistinct and unreadable. Laughter drifted out once, low and unfamiliar. Amanda's stomach twisted painfully. Her mind betrayed her, dragging up old fears she thought she had laid to rest. This is who he was. This is the world he belonged to. Maybe I don't fit here after all. Her chest tightened as guilt crept in. Guilt for feeling threatened, guilt for doubting him, guilt for wanting to run. Don't overthink, she told herself. You trust him. But trust, she was learning, was fragile when shadows from the past walked boldly into the present. Finally, after what felt like an hour but was barely 20 minutes, the door unlocked. It opened. The woman stepped out first. Up close, she was even more stunning. Her lipstick was perfect. Her smile sharp, knowing. Her eyes flicked toward Amanda, slow and assessing, lingering just long enough to feel intentional. A smirk curved her lips. She adjusted the strap of her dress casually and walked away without a word. Amanda swallowed hard. Mark stepped out moments later. The moment his eyes met Amanda's, something shifted. His expression sobered instantly. Concern replaced whatever professionalism he had been wearing like armor. Amanda, he said gently, can we talk? She stood slowly, every movement measured, controlled. Her voice surprised even herself. It didn't shake. Who was that? She asked quietly. Mark exhaled. Her name is Gina. Amanda nodded once. And why was she locked in your office? Mark didn't evade the question. Didn't deflect. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. She's from my past, he said. A past I'm not proud of. She came unannounced. I didn't invite her. Amanda searched his face, emotion swirling, hurt, fear, restraint. And the door, she pressed. She locked it, he admitted. I unlocked it as soon as I could get her to leave. Silence stretched between them, heavy and aching. I should have told you immediately, he continued softly. I didn't want you finding out like this. Amanda's eyes glistened, but she held her ground. I don't need you to hide your past, she said, voice tight. I need to know it doesn't still have access to you. Mark reached out, stopping himself just short of touching her hand, respecting the space she hadn't yet offered. It doesn't, he said firmly. You do. Only you. She looked away, breathing deeply, steadying herself. I trust you, she said at last. But today reminded me how easily old fears return. He nodded. And I'm here to face them with you. Not behind closed doors. Never again. Amanda met his gaze again, searching for truth. What she saw wasn't the man Gina remembered. It was a man choosing differently. Still, the seed of tension had been planted. And neither of them could pretend it hadn't. The city slept quietly beneath them. Amanda didn't realize where Mark was taking her until the elevator doors opened onto the rooftop garden, a place she'd only ever seen once, briefly, during a company event. Tonight, it looked completely different. Soft lights lined the edges of the space, glowing like fireflies against the dark sky. White candles flickered between clusters of green plants and blooming flowers, their scent light and calming. In the distance, the city stretched endlessly, a sea of lights beneath the stars. Amanda stopped walking. Mark, her voice caught. What is this? He turned to her, suddenly nervous in a way she rarely saw. Not the confident executive. Not the composed man who led rooms effortlessly. Just Mark. I wanted to give you something, he said quietly. Not a promise, I've already made those. Just a moment. She looked around again, overwhelmed. You didn't have to do all this. I know, he replied. I wanted to. He led her to a small table set near the edge of the garden. 2 chairs. A simple dinner laid out carefully. No extravagance, just intention. As they sat, a warm breeze brushed Amanda's skin. She wrapped her arms around herself instinctively, and immediately, Mark slipped his jacket over her shoulders. You always do that, she murmured. Do what? Notice, she said softly. He smiled faintly. I learned the hard way how important that is. A date built on memory. They ate slowly, talking about small things at first. The view, the music playing softly somewhere behind them, how different the city looked from above. It feels peaceful up here, Amanda said. Like the world can't reach us. Mark nodded. That's why I chose this place. I used to come here alone when everything felt too loud. She turned to him. Alone? Yes, he admitted. Back when I thought being alone was strength. She reached for his hand across the table. And now? Now, he said, intertwining his fingers with hers, I know strength can sit beside you quietly and still change everything. Her throat tightened. The heart-to-heart they moved away from the table later, walking slowly through the garden. Mark stopped near the railing, the city lights reflecting softly in Amanda's eyes. Do you remember who you were when we first met? He asked gently. She hesitated. I do. Too well. I remember thinking I had control, he said. Over my life. Over circumstances. Over people. His voice dropped. I didn't understand how wrong I was. She stayed silent, listening. I've spent a long time afraid that my past would always define me, he continued. That no matter how much I changed, it would still reach out and poison whatever I touched. Amanda stepped closer. And now, he said, turning to face her fully, I know that change isn't about erasing the past. It's about choosing differently every day. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't think I'd survive my past, she confessed softly. I thought fear would always be louder than hope. Mark lifted her hands, pressing them to his chest. But you did survive. And you didn't just survive, you grew. You softened where the world tried to harden you. Her voice trembled. You helped me feel safe again. The confession that broke them open. Mark inhaled deeply, as if bracing himself. I was terrified of losing you, he said quietly. Not because I'd be alone, but because life finally made sense when you walked into it. Amanda's tears spilled freely now. I didn't know how much I needed kindness until you gave it without asking for anything in return. He brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. You healed parts of me I didn't know were broken. She laughed softly through tears. We healed each other. Yes, he whispered. We did. They stood there, holding each other as the city hummed below. Two people who had walked through darkness and somehow found their way to the same light. The emotional peak. Mark rested his forehead against hers. I don't love you because you're strong, he said. I love you because you're honest. Because you're brave enough to feel. Amanda closed her eyes. I love you because you let me choose. Every day. Their kiss was slow, gentle, reverent, less about passion and more about promise. About gratitude. About us. When they pulled apart, Amanda rested her head against his shoulder, her voice barely audible. I never thought love could feel like this. Like what? He asked softly. Like coming home, she said. Mark held her tighter, the city lights glowing around them, the stars bearing witness. And in that quiet, meaningful place, where fear no longer ruled and love no longer felt impossible, they stood not as broken people seeking rescue, but as partners who had found each other and chosen to stay. The morning light arrived softly, like it didn't want to disturb them. Sunrise spilled through the wide windows of Mark's home, painting the walls in warm shades of gold and peach. The city beyond was still quiet, wrapped in that brief, sacred pause between night and day. Amanda stood barefoot by the window, a mug of tea warming her hands, her hair loose around her shoulders. Behind her, Mark watched. Not in a way that claimed her, but in a way that appreciated her. As if every ordinary moment with her still felt like something he could lose if he blinked too long. You always wake up before me, he murmured, his voice still rough with sleep. She smiled without turning. Old habit. Mornings used to be the only time I could breathe. He came up behind her slowly, careful not to startle her, and wrapped his arms around her waist. His chin rested lightly on her shoulder, his presence warm and steady. You don't have to steal peace anymore, he said softly. It's yours now. She leaned back into him, closing her eyes. I know. Sometimes. I still can't believe it. A gentle routine. Their days had settled into something beautifully simple. Mornings like this, quiet, unhurried. Evenings filled with shared meals, soft music, and conversations that wandered without pressure. Amanda helped Mark choose ties in the morning. Mark teased her about her habit of humming while she worked. They grocery shopped together, laughed over burnt toast, argued playfully about which movie to watch, and somehow, those small things felt like triumphs. Because once, Amanda's life had been nothing but survival. And now, it was living. Later that afternoon, Amanda sat beside her mother on the couch, helping her sort through old photographs. Her mother's hands were steadier these days. her laughter easier. You look happy, her mother said suddenly, glancing at her over her glasses. Amanda paused. I am. Her mother nodded, eyes shining. I prayed for this. Not wealth. Not perfection. Just peace for you. That word again. Peace. That evening, as Amanda returned home, she found Mark in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, struggling with a stubborn jar. Need help? She teased. He sighed dramatically. This jar has declared war on me. She laughed, twisted the lid open easily, and raised an eyebrow. Victory. He stared at the jar, then at her. I'm married well. She laughed harder, the sound filling the room, chasing away shadows that once lingered there. That night, as the sun dipped low and the sky burned amber and rose, they sat on the balcony together. Mark rested against the railing, Amanda curled beside him, her legs tucked under her. I used to think being strong meant never needing anyone, Mark said quietly. She turned toward him. And now I know strength can look like asking for help. Like listening. Like changing. He swallowed. Like loving you the right way. Her eyes filled with tears, not of pain, but of gratitude. You've grown so much, she whispered. So have you, he replied. You taught me that healing doesn't make someone weak. It makes them brave. She rested her head against his shoulder. We didn't save each other, she said thoughtfully. We just chose each other. He kissed her hair gently. Every day. A quiet moment of gratitude. The sky darkened slowly, stars appearing one by one. The city lights blinked on below them. Amanda, Mark said softly, do you ever think about how far you've come? She nodded. Sometimes. I think about the girl who was scared all the time. And I wish I could tell her, her voice broke, that it won't always hurt. That love doesn't always take, it can give. Mark reached for her hand, threading their fingers together. She'd be proud of you, he said. Tears slid down her cheeks, but she smiled. I think so too. They stayed there in silence for a long time. No urgency, no fear of what came next. Just gratitude. A life, lived fully. If someone were watching from a distance, they might see only ordinary moments. Amanda laughing as Mark splashed water while washing dishes. Mark handing her a note before work. Have a good day. I believe in you. Their hands finding each other instinctively in crowded places. Shared glances across rooms that spoke entire sentences without words. Nothing dramatic. Nothing loud. But everything meaningful. As night settled fully, Amanda whispered, I never thought love could feel empowering. Mark smiled softly. It's because it doesn't cage you. It walks beside you. She leaned into him, heart full, eyes heavy with peaceful tears. And in that quiet home, filled with light, laughter, and healed hearts, their story didn't end. It rested. Whole, hopeful, and beautifully alive. The afternoon was slow and golden, the kind that felt like a deep breath after a long cry. Amanda sat on the living room floor with papers spread around her, sunlight pouring in through the wide windows. Fabric samples. Color palettes. A notebook filled with handwritten ideas and small, careless hearts drawn in the margins. Mark stood a few feet away, sleeves rolled up, holding 2 mugs of tea like precious cargo. You've officially turned my living room into a planning headquarters, he said, amused. She looked up, smiling softly. You don't mind? I mind that I didn't think of it first, he replied, handing her a mug and lowering himself beside her. So, what's today's big decision? Amanda flipped a page, thoughtful. Garden wedding or small beach ceremony? Mark leaned back on his hands, eyes drifting to the ceiling. I used to think weddings were just events. Expensive ones. He glanced at her. Now it feels like we are building a memory we'll carry forever. Her smile deepened. Garden, then. Garden, he agreed without hesitation. Somewhere green. Alive. She nodded, as if that word mattered more than either of them admitted. Later that day, they stood in the backyard, hands dusty, a small sapling resting between them. Amanda brushed dirt from her palms. Are you sure about this? Mark laughed quietly. You're asking the man who once avoided commitment like it was fire. She smiled. I just want it to mean something. It does, he said gently. This tree won't bloom overnight. It'll need patience, care, time. He looked at her. Feels familiar, doesn't it? Her eyes glistened. They knelt together, pressing soil down around the roots, their shoulders touching. Someday, Amanda whispered, we'll sit under this and laugh about how nervous we were. And how wrong we were about love, Mark added. She looked at him. Not wrong. Just unready. He nodded. Until we met each other. Inside the house, they stood in front of an empty room, once a guest room, untouched for years. Amanda leaned against the doorframe. I was thinking, this could be a shared office. Mark turned to her, surprised. For both of us. Yes. No hierarchy. Just space. She hesitated. Together. He smiled slowly, something warm and emotional spreading across his face. You always find ways to make life feel balanced. She shrugged lightly. I want us to grow side by side, not behind each other. He stepped closer, resting his forehead against hers. I promise you, I'll never make you feel small. I know, she whispered. That's why I love you. Quiet laughter, real love. That evening, they cooked together, Mark chopping vegetables with unnecessary seriousness, Amanda teasing him relentlessly. You're holding the knife like it might betray you, she laughed. It's a sharp object. I respect it, he replied. She leaned into him, still laughing. You're ridiculous. And you adore me. She paused, then smiled softly. I do. They ate on the couch, legs tangled, the TV playing something neither of them watched. It wasn't dramatic. It was everything. Later that night, as Amanda curled up beside Mark, his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen. A name he hadn't seen in years. His expression changed, just slightly. Amanda noticed. Everything okay? He hesitated, then turned the phone face down. Yeah. Just someone from the past. She studied him carefully. Do you want to talk about it? Not tonight, he said gently. Tonight is ours. She nodded, trusting. Okay. He pulled her closer, his hand resting over her heart, steady and sure. Outside, the newly planted tree stood quietly beneath the moonlight, roots settling into the earth, preparing for seasons yet to come. And somewhere beyond their peaceful world, life waited. But for now, love held firm. Whole. Hopeful. Still growing. The wedding day arrived like a long-awaited miracle. The venue stood on a private estate overlooking the ocean, an architectural masterpiece of glass, marble, and cascading greenery. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen starlight beneath a vast open canopy, reflecting the afternoon sun in soft prisms of gold. White roses and ivory orchids lined the aisle, their fragrance carried gently by the sea breeze. Every detail spoke of elegance, intention, and quiet power. It was expensive, unapologetically so. But more than wealth, it radiated meaning. The guests' black cars arrived one after another. Executives, industry leaders, renowned creatives, old friends who had witnessed Mark's transformation, quiet supporters who had believed in Amanda long before the world noticed her. Amanda's mother sat in the front row, hands clasped tightly, tears slipping freely down her cheeks. She wore a soft champagne-colored gown, her smile trembling with pride. Look at her, she whispered to the woman beside her. She survived. Across the aisle, Mark's closest associates watched him with something close to reverence, not for his success, but for the man he had become. This isn't just a wedding, one guest murmured. It's a testimony. Amanda's entrance when the music changed, the world seemed to still. Amanda stepped into view. She wore a custom gown, simple in silhouette, breathtaking in detail. The fabric flowed like liquid light, hugging her gently, honoring her strength rather than hiding it. No excessive sparkle. No heavy crown. Just grace. Mark forgot how to breathe. As she walked toward him, every step echoed with memory. Fear, pain, doubt, but also resilience, courage, and rebirth. Her eyes never left his. And Mark's eyes held tears he didn't try to hide. You're real, he whispered as she reached him. She smiled softly. So are you. Their vows were not poetic performances. They were honest. I promise to choose you, Mark said, voice thick, even on days when the past tries to speak louder than the present. Amanda reached for his hands. I promise to stand beside you, not behind you, not beneath you, but with you. Always. When they kissed, the applause was thunderous, but what mattered was the quiet between them. The peace. The reception unfolded like a dream. A string orchestra played beneath the open sky. Tables shimmered with gold accents and candlelight. Laughter rose easily, freely. There was dancing. There were toasts that made people cry. Amanda laughed harder than she ever had in her life. Mark watched her from across the room, pride written plainly on his face. During the reception, a woman approached Amanda, elegant, confident, unmistakably powerful. She introduced herself as a senior executive from one of the largest global creative firms. "I've been following your work for months," she said. "Your resilience, your voice, it shows in everything you create." Amanda blinked, stunned. "You know my work." The woman smiled. "We'd like to offer you a partnership. Full creative control. International reach." Amanda's breath caught. "This is just the beginning," the woman added. "And congratulations. You chose well." A shared victory. Amanda found Mark near the balcony, music humming softly behind him. "I just got offered a deal," she whispered, eyes shining. "A big one." He didn't look surprised. He looked proud. "I knew they'd see you," he said. "The world was always going to catch up." Tears filled her eyes. "Thank you for never standing in my way." He took her face gently in his hands. "Watching you rise has been the greatest honor of my life." The night ends. The future begins. As the night drew to a close, fireworks lit the sky above the ocean, reflections dancing across the water. Amanda rested her head on Mark's shoulder. "Do you ever think about how impossible this once felt?" she asked. "All the time," he replied. "That's why I never take it for granted." They stood there, husband and wife, not as a fairy tale, but as proof. That love can rebuild. That trauma does not have the final word. That a woman can rise, claim her voice, and be loved without limits. And as the guests celebrated behind them, Amanda smiled quietly to herself. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a beginning. The honeymoon began with a flight to a secluded island, where the sea stretched endlessly, the sand was soft beneath their feet, and the air smelled of salt and flowers. Mark had arranged a private villa, tucked into a grove of palms, with a terrace overlooking the ocean. Every detail whispered thoughtfulness. Soft linens, candles waiting to flicker at sunset, a small table set for two, and a bottle of chilled champagne. As they entered the villa, Amanda felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the tropical sun. It was Mark's hand in hers, steady and familiar, grounding her. He looked at her with that same awe he had shown on their wedding day, his gaze lingering on her as though she were the only person in the world. "I still can't believe you're mine," he murmured, his voice low, full of reverence. Amanda laughed softly, her eyes shining. "I feel the same way, and it's the happiest feeling I've ever known." They unpacked slowly, lingering in the private quiet of the villa, their conversations soft, intimate, and unhurried. They shared stories of their childhoods, their hopes, even their lingering fears, and for the first time, those fears didn't feel suffocating. They felt safe, shared. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of gold and rose, Mark led Amanda to the terrace. They sat together, shoulders brushing, hands intertwined. The breeze teased her hair, and he brushed it gently behind her ear, just like he had months ago when their hearts were learning to trust each other again. "You make everything better," Amanda whispered, leaning into him. "And you've healed me in ways I didn't even know I needed," he replied, voice thick with emotion. Dinner was served under the stars. They fed each other bites, laughed when they missed, and toasted to their future. Mark's hand never left hers, sometimes brushing hers absent-mindedly, sometimes squeezing it with intent. They spoke quietly about dreams, a home filled with love, travel, their families, and the life they were ready to build together. Afterward, they wandered barefoot along the edge of the water, the moon reflecting off gentle waves. Amanda rested her head against his shoulder, feeling his steady heartbeat against her ear. "You feel like home," she murmured. Mark pressed a soft kiss to her temple. "And you're my heart. Always have been." Later, in their bedroom where sheer curtains billowed like ghosts, the intimacy deepened. He stood behind her at the vanity, carefully removing her delicate earrings, his fingers brushing the sensitive skin of her neck. She watched him in the mirror, seeing not the formidable CEO, but a man whose focus was entirely, tenderly, on her. His touch, when he turned her to face him and began to undo the hidden clasp of her dress, was one of reverence. The silk pulled at her feet. He didn't rush. He simply looked at her, his gaze a physical warmth. "Amanda," he breathed, her name a prayer. The physical act of love that followed was a continuation of the dance. It was slow, exploratory, a silent conversation. It was his lips tracing the line of her collarbone, a territory he now had a lifetime to map. It was her hands sliding under his shirt, not in haste, but to feel the steady, strong beat of his heart against her palm. It was the moment she opened her eyes and found his, dark and unwavering, watching her, ensuring every touch, every shift, was for her pleasure as much as his. There was no performance, only presence. Whispers were exchanged, not grandiose promises, but the fragile, vital ones. "You feel like home. I have you. Always." Afterward, tangled in the cool linen sheets, a new intimacy emerged, the unself-conscious intimacy of aftermath. He fetched water, and she drank, unbothered by her bare skin in the moonlight. She traced the faint scar on his shoulder from a long-ago sailing mishap, a story she now owned as part of his history. They talked in drowsy murmurs about nothing, the sound of a distant boat, the stubborn star shining brightest over the water. He fell asleep first, his arm a heavy, welcome weight across her waist. Amanda lay awake for a few moments more, listening to the deep, even rhythm of his breath. The villa, the coast, the beauty, it was all a breathtaking frame. But the masterpiece, the profound, intimate truth of the night, was this: in his arms, she was not just a beautiful wife, and he was not just a wealthy man. They were simply Mark and Amanda, two souls who had chosen each other, finding in the quiet dark not just passion, but the deepest, most reassuring peace of belonging. The years after their wedding passed in a beautiful rhythm. Amanda and Mark settled into a life full of laughter, love, and quiet routines that spoke more about intimacy than grand gestures ever could. Their days were filled with work, shared responsibilities, and soft moments stolen in the corners of their home. Early morning coffees on the balcony, whispered jokes across the kitchen, hands brushing as they walked through sunlit corridors. Then came the day when they learned their family was about to grow. Amanda sat on the sofa, hands pressed over her heart, tears brimming, as she watched Mark's reaction. His usual calm and composed demeanor melted into a stunned, speechless joy, his hands trembling as he held hers. "Twins," Amanda whispered, laughing and crying at the same time. "Twins." Mark repeated, as if the word itself was too wonderful to be real. Then, catching her gaze, he smiled, soft, radiant, and overflowing with a mixture of awe and love. "Our twins," he breathed. "We are going to be a family of 4. The pregnancy was a period of quiet anticipation and gentle care. Mark was never far from Amanda's side, always there to brush her hair back, adjust pillows, offer soft words of comfort, and carry her shopping bags with a protective pride. Amanda marveled at the way he adapted to every new worry, every new flutter and kick from inside her belly. "You're already so strong," Mark whispered one evening as she rested her head against his chest, feeling the twins move. "Our little boy and girl, they've got the best parents they could ever hope for." Amanda laughed softly, tears in her eyes. "You make it easy to feel safe, Mark. You make everything possible." When the day of their children's birth finally arrived, it was nothing short of miraculous. Amanda was surrounded by a team of doctors in a softly lit delivery room, Mark at her side, holding her hand with a grip that was equal parts reassurance and fear of letting go. Hours of labor passed in a haze of pain, focus, and unspoken communication between them. Amanda breathed, cried, and clutched his hand, and Mark whispered encouragement, stroked her hair, and kissed her forehead between contractions. Then, the first cry pierced the air, a strong, healthy wail that made both of them break into unrestrained tears. Their baby boy was here. Moments later, another cry followed, softer but equally alive, their baby girl. Mark, tears streaming freely, leaned over the bassinet, brushing his fingers gently across his son's tiny hand, then lifting his daughter to his chest. "Our family," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "All ours. Perfect. Every bit of it." Amanda, exhausted but glowing, rested back against the bed, her hand over her heart as she watched Mark cradle their children. "I can't believe it," she said softly. I never imagined this kind of happiness." "You deserve it," Mark said, looking down at her with love that could fill oceans. "You've earned every bit of joy in the world. And I promise, we'll give them everything we've got, love, protection, laughter, and a home full of warmth." They spent hours just like that, holding, smiling, laughing softly at the tiny features of their twins, marveling at the miracle of life they had created together. Amanda traced little fingers over their tiny toes, whispered names they had chosen, and felt a sense of completeness she had never known. Mark leaned down, brushing a soft kiss across her temple. "You did this, Amanda. You gave us this," he murmured. "You've made me the happiest man alive." "And you made me feel safe enough to let it happen," Amanda replied, her hand moving to rest on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart against hers. "This, all of this, it's our love. It's everything we've survived. It's our family." In the quiet aftermath, as the twins slept wrapped in soft blankets and the room glowed with the warmth of new life, Amanda and Mark held each other close, feeling a love deeper and more resilient than anything they had ever known. They whispered promises to one another and to their children, promises of guidance, protection, and endless devotion. It was a love that had grown from pain, fear, and vulnerability into strength, trust, and an unbreakable bond. And now, with the laughter of a baby boy and the soft coos of a baby girl filling their home, Amanda and Mark knew with absolute certainty that this was only the beginning of the most beautiful chapter of their lives.